What's up, guys? Koolaid here. Welcome to another episode of Killing Time with Koolaid. And before we get started, I do want to kind of address this week's lack of weekly patch notes and news video. Obviously, I did not post one up because there was no patch this week, and I'm happy for that. I'm glad they didn't try to rush the new carbines out. I'm glad they decided to leave them on PTS a little bit longer. I think this might have something to do with the fact that the last few patches have been pretty miserable. A lot of people are having a lot of problems, and I hope they continue to do this in the future where they leave stuff on the PTS longer and maybe stray away from always having to have a patch every Wednesday or Thursday. It hasn't been good, and the whole reason they did that is to have less problems where they weren't implementing a whole bunch of stuff in one giant chunk. But it seems like they're almost still trying to do that, but every week. Some of the patches that we're getting every week are still pretty large. I mean, you take the Liberator update. You're getting a lot of stuff, all crammed down there in 1 week. So I hope they do this more often, actually, just skip weeks. Just basically, like I said, to have less problems. And we don't need content all the time. We don't need new content every week. We don't need new stuff. What we do need is a game that runs properly. And for the most part, at least for me, I don't have many problems when it comes to patch day. I do have occasional crashes all the time, not just patch day. But, I mean, it's nothing game-breaking for me. And I hope most of you are kind of in that same boat. I know there are some of you that have some more major problems, have a lot more crashes than that. And that sucks. That's something that needs to be taken care of. And that needs to be focused on more than implementing new content. And I hope they start going that route. And like I said, I hope they stop doing the weekly patches if they don't have them ready to go, if they don't have some of the kinks ironed out. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to throw that out there quick before we got started on the mail questions. But we will start up with the mail now, and our first question is from Ben Grindle, and he says, what if all bases were partly destructible, meaning you couldn't tear down the whole place, but some barriers and whatnots could be destroyed? Then when the battle ended and the place started to thin of people, NPC construction workers would come in and rebuild the place, or engineers could rebuild it for experience. This would also give more incentive to attack back and would insert some more strategy. Also, infiltrators would have more opportunities to sabotage the base while the enemy was rebuilding. This is a really cool idea. I love destruction. It's one of the things that I miss about Battlefield when I play Planetside 2 is the destruction. It's one of the cool elements of Battlefield, of the whole Battlefield series. And the problem with Planetside 2, if you start having destruction, it probably would cause more slowdowns, things like that. It would probably take away from the optimization of the game, which is something we definitely don't want. But if you could get by that aspect, I think this idea would be really awesome. I would really like to see it, but I don't think it's something we'll ever see. Like you listed a whole bunch of possibilities of why this could improve the game. I pretty much agree. I think it would be awesome, but again, I just don't think it would work in Planetside 2 in its current state. But that is a really cool idea. And then also, on a different note, he has another question. Do you think the overshield for the NC MBT is OP? And if so, how would you fix it? Same with the NC Max Riot Shield. So if I had to pick one thing on the NC that I had to call overpowered, I would probably pick the Vanguard shield. It's really strong, and even without even using it, just by looking at the 3 different MBT's Empire-specific ability, I would hands down pick the Vanguard shield. Without ever even having to use them in the battlefield. It just sounds and is that great. Now, I can't fully answer this question because I really have no experience in a Prowler, and I have very little experience in a Mag Rider. In fact, I don't have either Lockdown or the Mag Rider boost even purchased on my characters. So I really have no experience using them, but instead of nerfing the Vanguard shield, I would buff their abilities. I think that's how a lot of people like to look at things, is they don't like to see nerfs as opposed to seeing buffs for the underpowered things. And like I said, I can't fully answer this because I haven't used them. I don't know how good those actually are. I know I would absolutely hate Lockdown. I hate it on the max. I think it's absolute crap on the max. For a tank, if you're somebody that likes to sit back and lay siege to a base, it's probably a pretty decent ability, but it wouldn't be something that I'd like to use. I wouldn't know exactly how to buff that. I wouldn't exactly know how to buff the Mag Rider charge ability, but to sum up my answer, yes, I do think it's better than the other abilities, but I wouldn't necessarily nerf it in any way. Like I said, I would just rather buff the other two abilities to put them on par with the Vanguard shield. As for the max shield, I don't think that's overpowered at all. In fact, I don't use it all that often. I typically still use charge. I think that makes for a better offensive type max ability. But again, I do think the max shield, and this is to a lesser extent than the Vanguard shield, is better than the other max abilities. I think it has some use, whereas Lockdown, I think, is just absolute crap on a max, and Zoe now is, you know, again, on my VS Max, I typically don't run that anymore. I run Charge. It's not as bad as Lockdown, but I think those two abilities need to be looked at, reworked, whereas the Max Shield, I feel, is the one that's actually worth using, the one that actually has a purpose. I don't think it's overpowered, though. I just think the other two need to be reworked. So moving on to 828 Morton, who always makes an appearance on Killing Time with Koolaid. He asks, what would you like to see an anti-infantry support launcher for the heavy assault? The launcher would deal low damage to all targets in the AoE, but would be unable to kill a full health target in one volley or one shot. The NC would be a mini Fury. The TR fires a cloud of small rockets. The VS fires a single projectile that has bullet drop, and when it hits the ground, it sends a small directional shockwave forward. Launchers would do no or very little damage to vehicles. The problem with this is you encounter the whole noob tube thing where you're going to have guys just running around with these out. And I know you're talking about doing low damage, but if enough people are using these, it would just kind of cause some nasty situations, some chaos where even if they did half health, 500 damage, which is a lot less than a normal rocket, if they're doing an AoE, you know, with multiple people using these, it's just going to make for problems, I think. Nobody likes to be killed by a dumbfire rocket or any kind of rocket when you're standing right next to somebody. And if you start implementing these bigger AoE, even if they do less damage, I think it's kind of the same result, just slightly different variation. So I don't think I would be a huge fan of something like this. I could be wrong. I mean, it could work, but it would have to be, it's something I'd have to play around with before I could give a full answer. But on my first impressions, I don't think I would like to see this in game. Next question from 828 Morton. Do you think forward grips for bolt action sniper rifles should reduce the idle sway while looking down sights? I think that would be a solid option. I think as long as they remain an attachment for bolt action rifles, they need to do something. And I know we're getting the straight pull bolt, so that is what most people are going to be using on their sniper rifles, on their bolt action sniper rifles, once that actually gets implemented. But I would like to see something done with the grip to make it an actual option, to maybe counteract the straight pull bolt. And reducing the idle sway sounds like it would be a good idea and work. You know, obviously wouldn't reduce the amount that you could hold your breath, or it wouldn't reduce the sway the same whereas if you're holding your breath. But maybe you could actually just add to the amount that you can hold your breath. Something like that. I don't know. But it does, something needs to happen, or they just need to remove it completely, because right now, and since the start of the game, it's done absolutely nothing as far as anybody knows, unless there's some hidden thing in there that Sony is trying to keep secret from us. But it needs to either be removed or it needs to have some sort of function. It's just silly that it's sitting there with no purpose, and people spend certs on it thinking that it does stuff, and it just doesn't. So yes, I would like to see something at least done with the forward grip for bolt actions. And the last question from 828 Morton, he actually has like 3 or 4 more questions here, but I think I've sort of answered them in the last couple episodes. So we'll pick one more from 828 Morton. What if the engineer could throw a repair grenade that would work similarly to Medic's heal grenade? This sounds alright. I don't see a huge problem with this. I would like to see... I've always been wondering why there wasn't an AoE repair on the engineer like there is on a medic. Maybe it's just because the engineer is so versatile already. But I would like to see something like this. Something where you could repair multiple maxes with one shot. And it doesn't have to be a very fast repair. It could work very slow, like the heal grenade. So yes, I think something like this would work. Now I could be missing something. Maybe there's a reason why something like this is not in the game already, because it seems pretty practical when you have the heal grenades, when you have the AoE heal. But I think this could work, and I wouldn't mind seeing something like this in game at all. Next question is by T.S. Balmer, and he asks, between the Shadow, the Vandal, the Impetus, and the SASR, it feels like we have one more weapon than we need. What do you feel the ideal situations for each weapon are, and do your answers change when you consider the VS equivalents? Well, I'll just kind of lump all the factions in together, and we do have more weapons than we need. Out of those weapons that you listed, or those type of weapons that you listed, I really don't use the semi-automatic sniper rifles ever. I think out of all the weapons we have, those are the least effective, and those have the smallest role. But on the other hand, the reason we have all these is for variety, and some people really like the semi-automatic sniper rifles. Some people make a lot more use out of them than I do, and some people feel really comfortable with them. And that could be said about any class across any of the factions. There's a variety there which doesn't necessarily need to be there, but people like variety. You could probably eliminate half the carbines, half the LMGs, half the assault rifles, and you'd still have a weapon for each role. But people like variety, and Sony needs to make their money by selling weapons, so that's why they're there. Now, the ideal situation where I use all of these weapons, the Vandal is my go-to medium range weapon. It's probably my favorite weapon in the game right now for infiltrators. You know, I quickly racked up like 400 kills with it right after it came out. I haven't been using it much since then because I'm, you know, playing around testing some other stuff. But that is my go-to medium range weapon. The Impetus or any of the semi-automatic sniper rifles I don't use. I don't feel they have a real range that I would choose them over something else. Now the SASR is definitely an awesome gun, and I don't feel like that necessarily has a definite range where you have to use it either. Now, it's probably best suited for that medium to short long range, if that makes sense, sniping. You know, sniping within inside 100 yards. But I'm typically using that in the same ranges where I use my Vandal. It's just, what do I feel like using at the moment? And the Shadow was kind of replaced by the Vandal. You know, I said in my Vandal review that the Shadow is probably still a little bit better for longer range, but again, at that point, it's probably where I bust out the SASR or even one of the other higher zoom bolt action sniper rifles. Now, as far as the VS equivalents, since they are a little bit different, I do think the Nyx and the Phantom are going to be a little bit better. When I did my semi-automatic sniper rifle Good Gunner Polished Turd, I did like the Phantom better than the TR and NC choices. That's because of the lack of bullet drop. I do feel they're a little bit better. Same with the Nyx. I do think the Nyx is going to be a little bit better than the Shadow and the TR Empire Specific Semi-Automatic Scout. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. But basically, I hope that answers your question. I think even though we do have more guns than we need, I wouldn't want to see them removed because a lot of people like them guns that I wouldn't necessarily use, and I'm sure people that use the guns that I don't like probably feel the same way about the guns that I do like. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. And for the last question of the day, because we need to wrap this up, it's getting pretty long, and I'm going to go with an easy one here. Joseph Kroner wants to know, what would you say is your favorite camo for each continent, and do you think that right camo actually makes difference, especially on mid to high range? I'll tell you what, I use the same camo pretty much on every class, and I really don't ever change it. I don't invest too much money in camos. Most of my money goes into the weapons, and camos are pretty much an afterthought that I really only buy. I bought probably 5 of them right when the game came out. And I bought maybe a couple since then, but I don't put too much stock into what camo I'm using. I basically pick the one that I think looks cool, and I'll change it up from time to time, but I really don't think it makes too much of a difference in the actual game. The one class that I would have thought camo would be big on is the Infiltrator, and the fact that you're always going to have that baby blue on the NC Infiltrator kind of takes away from that anyway, so I don't think camo makes a huge difference. Some people are going to completely disagree with me on that, and I know some people are constantly changing up their camo, even on their tanks and whatever, depending on what continent they're on. I do not do that. I stick with one camo and I just roll with it. I really don't even, think about changing camo at this point in the game. Again, I know some people always do, and some people are going to disagree with me, but that's just how I look at it. So, anyways, guys, that's it for today. I have a lot more questions. Some of you guys still have questions in here that are going on 2-3 weeks old. Don't worry, I have not forgotten about you. I just have not got to them yet. If I keep getting questions at the rate I am now, I'll probably slip in another Killing Time with Kool-Aid other than just our weekly Friday episode to try to get through some of these questions. Because again, I love doing these episodes, and I think you guys like them, and I want to get all your questions answered. I don't want to skip any questions. That's just how I want to do this. I don't want to pick and choose. So I'll probably end up slipping a couple more episodes in during the week as opposed to just sticking with the Friday episode. So anyways, guys, that is all I have. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.